that we know more about the mission tonight, let's turn our attention to the rocket that you're seeing on your screen. You're looking at a live view of our Falcon 9 rocket set to launch Eutelsat's Hotbird 13G satellite from Space Launch Complex 40. Starting from the bottom of the rocket, we have our 9 M1D engines connected to the first stage. These 9 engines help accelerate the vehicle through the thickest parts of the Earth's atmosphere and into space. Our first stage, also referred to as the booster, is flying for the 7th time tonight, having previously launched CRS-22, Crew 3, Turksat 5B,
Stage 1, fuel load complete.
Crew 4, CRS-25, and 1 Starlink mission. Above the first stage is the second stage, which has a single Merlin vacuum, or what we call an MVAC engine, which ignites after the first stage separates. The second stage is what will carry the Eutelsat Hotbird 13G satellite to orbit. At the very top of the rocket, you'll notice the large structure with the pointed nose on top of the second stage. That is our payload fairing, and that's what you're seeing there on your screen. The fairing is made up of 2 carbon composite halves and protects the payload on their way to orbit, and will be jettisoned or separated around 3 minutes into flight. The Eutelsat Hotbird 13G satellite is currently safely enclosed inside the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which, with each half flying today being flight proven, one half is flying for the 4th time and the other is flying for a 6th time. Hotbird 13G is also hosting the EGNOS GEO4 payload. EGNOS is the European Geostationary Navigation Overlay Service that acts as an augmentation service to global positioning systems to improve reliability of positioning information. Now, with liftoff just about 5 minutes from now, we're currently waiting for the retraction of the transporter erector.
Pressing tanks for retract.
In preparation for the TE retraction, the TE clamps will open up first, and once they're fully open, then the TE can begin to pull away just slightly from the vehicle. At T0, ground hydraulic systems will pull the TE even further away from Falcon 9 as it lifts off. Now we are just about 10 to 15 seconds away from those clamp arms beginning to open.
Drawback retract is starting.
And there's that call out that it's actually beginning now. So the clamp arms are just below the payload fairing, right above the second stage. And there's a little better view. You can see those clamp arms opening up. Again, once that is fully open, the TE can begin to move away from the vehicle. Now, the first stage is connected to a launch mount at the base of the TE, but the structure is hinged and will track away from the vehicle in preparation for launch. And you may have heard that call out called the strong back. That is referring to the TE. And it looks like the TE should be fully retracted at this point. So at this point in the countdown, both the first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Both first stage and second stage should finish propellant loading about a minute apart from each other.
Stage 1, lock load complete.
And great timing. Stage 1 liquid oxygen loading is now complete. Stage 2 should wrap up around the T-2 minute mark. And you can see some white clouds there on your screen around the vehicle. That is the chilled gas above the liquid oxygen tank liquid surface that we vent overboard to maintain pressure inside of the tank as needed. And when that gas comes into contact with the humid, moist air, it condenses into clouds or water, which is similar to a cold glass of water with condensation forming around it. At T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 will be in startup. That means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. Just inside T-minus 2 seconds, we light the Merlin M1D engines for liftoff. And the Hotbird 13G satellite continues to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the vehicle. Weather is still looking good for T0, and the range is green for launch. Just waiting for the call
Stage
out.
2, LOX load complete.
And there it is. Stage 2 liquid oxygen loading is now complete. That means Falcon 9's propellant loading is completed. 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. And now that propellant loading is complete, we will begin to vent out the
gas closeout has started.
We will begin to vent the liquid oxygen line on the transport erector. And there you can see even more of those white clouds. That's exactly what it is. We're venting out that liquid oxygen from that strong back there. And coming up here in just about 10 seconds, Falcon 9 should go into startup.
Falcon is in startup.
Flight computers have now taken over the launch countdown. Now just waiting the final call from the launch director.
Go for launch.
Great news. All systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 with Eutelsat's Hotbird 13G payload.
T-minus 30 seconds. Seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff of Eutelsat Hotbird 13G. Go Falcon 9.
Nominal first stage chamber pressures.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, carrying Eutelsat Hotbird 13G satellite. Now during ascent, the M1D engines will actually swivel and help steer Falcon 9, and this is known as gimbal. The rocket autonomously tilts the engines.
Supersonic.
The rocket autonomously tilts the engines just a few degrees, and this gimbaling allows the vehicle to perform a gravity turn, which is when we are going vertical but also going horizontal, and you can kind of see that on your screen there.
Max Q.
Great call out. We've just passed through Max Q. That is the largest structural load that the vehicle sees on ascent. After we pass through Max Q, we can now begin to throttle up the 9 M1D engines on stage 1. And in just about a minute, we'll have 3 events happening back to back. The first will be MECO, stage separation, and then SES-1, which is second stage engine start 1. Got some really cool views.
MVAC is chilling in.
Really cool views of those 9 M1D engines on the first stage. Now MECO is main engine cutoff, and that's where all 9 of those engines will shut down, and that prepares the vehicle for stage separation. Then stage 1 can make its way back down to Earth, while stage 2 continues with SES-1, or second stage engine start 1. That's where we will ignite that MVAC engine on the second stage for the first time for this mission. Again, coming up here in just a few seconds, we will have MECO, stage separation, and SES-1.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
And there we could see MECO stage separation on your right-hand screen. That MVAC engine is lighting up there. Coming up next, we will have fairing separation. The fairing halves flying today are flight proven, one half flying for the 4th time and the other for a 6th time. And on your left-hand screen is a view of the first stage. The grid pins have now deployed.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And there you can see on your right-hand screen the fairing halves being jettisoned. Now we will be attempting to retrieve these fairing halves again today once they fall back down to Earth using our recovery ship, Bob.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
T plus 4 minutes into today's mission. That call out there was just acquisition of signal of one of our ground stations. Now we're in the first of 2 planned MVAC burns prior to satellite deployment, and that's what you're seeing there on your screen is the MVAC on the 2nd stage. The next event will be first stage entry burn, and that'll occur around T plus 6 minutes and 30 seconds. And you should also be able to see that on your screen. Now for that entry burn, we relight 3 M1D engines, starting with the center one, which is the E9 engine, followed shortly thereafter by E1 and E5 engines. This burn is the first of 2 planned burns for the first stage and slows the vehicle down as it passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. Now stage 1 does need to slow down to reduce the re-entry forces, and that helps us to recover and reuse the vehicles.
Vehicle on nominal trajectory.
And great callouts. Vehicle is on nominal trajectories. That entry burn is just under 1.5 minutes away. And as a reminder, with a unique pan-European coverage, the high-power Hotbird satellites at 13 degrees east form one of the largest broadcasting systems in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, delivering 1,000 television channels to more than 160 million TV homes. Now, during the re-entry burn, Falcon 9 is decelerating by firing its Merlin engines, but it's still moving very rapidly. This causes the vehicle to fly through the Merlin's exhaust gases, which is also called the rocket's plume. And this thin layer of soot from Falcon 9's carbon-based fuel, kerosene, is deposited onto the exterior of the vehicle. Again, entry burn for the first stage is in just under 20 seconds from now.
Stage 1 FTS has saved.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And as you can see, your left-hand screen light up there. Those 3 engines have ignited. This entry burn will last about 25 seconds long.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
And that concludes the entry burn for the first stage. Now, for those that might not be familiar with why we land our rockets, reusability is key to lowering the cost of spaceflight, which enables more investments in critical science research. And the Falcon 9 first stage that is supporting today's mission performed this entry burn for the 7th time tonight, previously launching CRS-22, Crew 3, Turksat 5B, Crew 4, CRS-25, and 1 Starlink mission. Now we're about 30 seconds away from the next couple of events. Next up will be SECO 1, which is 2nd stage engine cutoff 1. And that's when we shut down that MVAC engine on the 2nd stage.
Stage 1 transonic.
And we allow that 2nd stage to coast. And then shortly after
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Shortly after SECO 1, we'll have the landing burn starting on the first stage.
Pico.
Stage 1 landing burn.
There we've had SECO and stage 1 landing burn has begun. Let's watch as Falcon 9 touches down on just read the instructions.
Landing leg deploy.
Nominal orbit
Stage 1 landing
insertion.
confirmed.
And great news there and a couple of great call outs. Falcon 9 has touched down on just read the instructions. This landing marks SpaceX's 152nd recovery of an orbital class rocket, including first stage landings for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. And we also heard SECO 1 and confirmation of good orbit. So now the mission isn't over just yet. The second stage is now embarking on its first coast phase. After the coast phase, we will light that MVAC engine for a second time around T plus 29 minutes. So we'll see you back here in about 20 minutes. In the meantime, sit back, relax, and enjoy some space tunes.
Loss of signal, Bermuda. position of signal. Goodbye.
I'm back, chill.
welcome back to the webcast of the Falcon 9 mission carrying the Hotbird 13G satellite for our customer Eutelsat. We've had a nominal mission so far. Falcon 9 launched on time at 1:22 a.m. Eastern Time from Space Launch Complex 40. We successfully recovered the first stage on our drone ship, just read the instructions for the 7th time, and the second stage completed its first burn of the Merlin vacuum engine. Now we are just a few seconds away from a second ignition of the MVAC engine, which will carry the second stage and the Hotbird 13G
MVAC startup.
payload into the orbit needed to deploy. And we just heard that call out. That is SES-2, or second stage engine start 2. Now this burn will be about a minute long. And we are about halfway through the burn. In about 30 seconds, we will have SECO, or second stage engine cutoff 2. And once we have SECO, we will wait for a confirmation of good orbit.
Shut down.
We've just had SECO 2, just awaiting.
Insertion.
There's that call out. We just had a confirmation of good orbit. So with confirmation of a successful second engine start, cutoff, and good orbit, Eutelsat's Hotbird 13G satellite is still attached to Falcon 9's second stage and is set to deploy in about 5 minutes. So we're going to take another short break, so enjoy the space tunes, and we'll come back to you around the T plus 35-minute mark.
Acquisition of signal, Artibista. Expected loss of signal, Capone.
Welcome back to the Eutelsat Hotbird 13G mission. So far, we've had an on-time liftoff at 1:22 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by successful ascent, stage separation, first stage landing, and 2 second stage engine burns. Now, we are coming up on payload deployment in about a few seconds here. And as a reminder, Eutelsat is a world-leading satellite operator covering Europe, Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and the Americas. And we are currently standing by for the deployment of their Hotbird 13G satellite, which we expect here momentarily.
Payload separation confirmed.
An incredible view there with the Earth in the background. The Eutelsat Hotbird 13G satellite drifting away from Falcon 9 second stage. Great view. So with confirmation of successful...
Acquisition of signal, Diego Garcia.
With confirmation of successful payload deploy, we're going to end our launch broadcast.
Acquisition of signal, Maldives.
We're going to end our launch broadcast for tonight. All of us here at SpaceX want to give a big thank you to our customer Eutelsat for entrusting us with today's mission. We also want to give a big shout out to the Range and Federal Aviation Administration for supporting today's mission. As I mentioned earlier, today's launch concludes our 189th overall mission to date and 51st launch of this year. Thanks to all of our viewers for tuning in and your continued support. Have a great night, and we'll see you again soon.